do not remember.
They say you can't trust a dream, especially the one where you show up to your college final naked and the professor turns into your childhood dentist. But in Janey Whitmore's case, dreams weren't metaphors or symbols or subconscious soup. They were crime scenes, blood-spattered, weirdly accurate crime scenes. And that was before the FBI started leaving voicemails. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I like knowing where and when people are getting creeped out. It's comforting, like ghost stories around a global campfire. Anyway, this story begins on a Tuesday, because as we know, Tuesdays are when fate makes weird decisions. Janey Whitmore lived in a sleepy suburb outside Akron, Ohio. She worked the night shift at a 24-hour grocery store called Bargain Bucket and had exactly 3 hobbies: decaf coffee, true crime podcasts, and aggressively judging crossword puzzles. She was, by all accounts, the kind of person you'd never notice unless she dropped a can of soup on your foot. Until she had the dream. It started like most of her dreams, half-formed and ambient, like the background music at a dentist's office. But then, it snapped into focus. She was standing in the woods, cold air, pine needles, a flickering porch light in the distance, and a smell, metallic and wrong. She looked down and saw a body, a woman, face down in a patch of muddy leaves. Red hair tangled around a broken wrist. Janey remembered thinking that's not how a wrist should bend. When she jolted awake at 3:12 a.m., heart hammering, she did what any rational person would do. She fed her cat, Tallulah, made toast with butter and cinnamon, and went to work. But the dream wouldn't leave her alone. At 9:04 a.m., a breaking news alert buzzed her phone as she was restocking cereal. A jogger had discovered a body in a wooded area just outside town. A red-haired woman. Face down, Janey's toast tried to make a comeback. She told herself it was coincidence. Lots of people had red hair. Lots of woods looked like that. But the detail about the porch light came out during the noon update. A flickering bulb on the back of an old house that no one lived in anymore. Janey called her sister, who was a nurse and didn't believe in woo-woo stuff. You probably saw something online and dreamed it after. Her sister said, I didn't, though. Well, then you're psychic, she snorted. Congrats. Try not to dream about my embarrassing medical records. Janey laughed, but her hands were shaking. She spent the next few days in an odd fog, the sort where you keep checking the news for something you already know, but hope you're wrong about. She tried to convince herself it was one of those brain quirks, like when people swear they knew about 9/11 before it happened. But really they're misremembering. There's even a term for it, retrospective clairvoyance bias. It's debated heavily in cognitive psychology. Do we just rewrite memories to match reality? Or is there something weirder going on? Then, on Sunday, it happened again. She dreamed of a man in a swamp, limping, one shoe, red. She remembered the color specifically because she thought, why would you wear red in a swamp? That's asking to be eaten by something with opinions. This time she woke up gasping, sweaty, and a little annoyed. Tallulah, she mumbled to her cat, who was busy licking her own butt. This is going to sound weird, but if I dream about one more crime scene, I might need to call a priest, or Anderson Cooper. 2 days later, the police found a missing man's body in a swamp near Dayton. He'd lost a foot. His other shoe was red. Janey didn't toast anything that morning. Instead, she called the local police department and said, Hi, this is going to sound strange, but I think I dreamed about your swamp guy. A long silence, then a click. She'd been put on hold. The hold music was Call Me Maybe, which somehow made it worse. The detective she eventually spoke to said, Ma'am, we get a lot of tips. You say you had a dream. Are you claiming to be involved, or... No, I mean, I dreamt the scene, before it was reported. He sighed. You're not the first psychic to call, but if you actually dream the lottery numbers, let me know. I just got divorced. Janey hung up. Tallulah stared at her like she'd just confessed to embezzling tuna that night. Janey went to work early, hoping the monotony would push away the feeling of dread curling around her brain like fog on a bad sitcom set. She arranged cans, priced pickles, and tried not to Google how to tell if your dreams are time-traveling. But the next day, someone knocked on her apartment door. It was two men, suits, smiling just enough to make you worry. They flashed badges, FBI. Ms. Whitmore, the taller one said. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your dreams, which, for the record, is never a comforting sentence. She blinked at them. Unless you're here to interpret the one with the marshmallow dentist, I think I need a lawyer. The short one smiled. Oh, we're not charging you with anything. We're just curious. Because nothing screams harmless inquiry like two federal agents showing up after your subconscious spoils a murder investigation. Janey invited them in mostly because she didn't know what else to do. That. And she hadn't vacuumed in 3 weeks and felt weirdly judged by one of the agent's eyebrows. They sat at her tiny kitchen table, which wobbled slightly whenever someone breathed too hard. The tall agent introduced himself as Agent Lowe, the other as Agent Patel. Both wore that unmistakable "we've read your internet search history" expression. We understand you've had some vivid dreams, said Lowe, pulling a small notepad from his inner jacket pocket, like he was about to critique her subconscious. Janey nodded slowly, then gestured toward her cat, who had leapt onto the table and begun licking the spine of a National Geographic. Tallulah dreams about tuna and overthrowing my houseplants. Mine are weirder. Agent Patel didn't laugh. He looked like he hadn't laughed since the Bush administration. Can you tell us exactly what you dreamed in the first case? Janey recounted the red-haired woman in the woods, the flickering porch light, the broken wrist. She even added the smell like pennies and motor oil just to see if they flinched. They didn't. Instead, they exchanged a look, the kind of look that said, "This just got above our pay grade." Patel scribbled something and asked, "Did you know the victim?" No, unless she was secretly my high school gym teacher. And even then, I'd only remember her if she made me run laps. They asked more questions. The swamp dream. The red shoe. The exact wording of her 911 call. Did she take medications? Use psychedelics? Have a family history of visual disturbances? I once hallucinated a dancing bagel during a 36-hour flu, Janey offered helpfully. But I don't think he committed any felonies. Finally, they got to the real question. Have you dreamed anything else? Something that might happen soon. Janey paused. I dreamed a giant duck was president. But I think that was just a weird Twitter thread I read before bed. Lowe didn't laugh, but his nostril twitched. Victory. Patel handed her a card. If you dream anything that might relate to ongoing cases or anything dangerous, call this number immediately. Janey turned the card over. It was blank on the back, which felt unnecessarily ominous. They left after that, warning her not to speak to the press. Not that she had plans to. The last time someone had interviewed her, it was the high school yearbook, and they misspelled her name as janitor. The next few nights were quiet, dreamless, or at least nothing memorable. Janey started to believe maybe it was over. Maybe her brain had just gone through a weird patch, like an old TV picking up static from a nearby horror channel. And then she had the candle dream. It was soft at first. A dark room, stone walls, the gentle flicker of a single candle. She could see a man in a chair, arms tied, eyes wide with fear. An oxygen tank hissed faintly behind him. There were no windows, no door, but the smell of burning hair lingered. And then a whisper. Not the second match. The third. She woke up with her pulse pounding like a marching band. Janey didn't wait. She called the number. Agent Patel answered on the second ring, which she found vaguely disturbing. Whitmore, he said. Not even a hello. I dreamed a man trapped in a stone room with an oxygen tank and a candle, and it doesn't end well, she blurted. There was a pause. Then where was the room? I don't know. Stone walls? No windows? I think it was underground. She could hear typing, keys clacking. Patel's voice was low and serious when he finally said, "Thank you. We'll be in touch." 2 days later, Janey got a call from an unknown number. A woman this time. "Agent Reeves, your dream helped solve a double homicide in Maryland," she said. Victim was being held in a cellar rigged with an oxygen failsafe and an ignition source. Only reason we found him in time was the candle detail. Janey dropped her phone. Tallulah meowed like she'd just witnessed a felony. A few days later, someone left a package on her doorstep. No return address. Inside was a mug that said, "I dream of murder," in glittery letters. No note. Janey wasn't sure if it was a warning or a gift. She started locking her windows anyway. True historical fact, Break the FBI has worked with psychics before. In fact, in the 1970s and 1980s, a classified program known as Project Stargate studied remote viewing for potential use in espionage. It was eventually shut down. Officially, unofficially debatable. And quite a few intelligence veterans still argue over whether psychic phenomena are just cold reading, or something harder to explain. Meanwhile, Janey's social life had shifted. She'd stopped going to trivia nights. She'd stopped sleeping through the night. She'd definitely stopped dating Nothing Ruins a Hinge profile like likes books, pizza, and occasionally dreams of unsolved murders. She couldn't even enjoy podcasts anymore. Every time she listened to a true crime case, her brain started playing a twisted guessing game. Was that guy the killer? Did she already see this one in a dream? By late September, she was keeping a dream journal like it was her tax records. One entry simply read, "Weird basement. 12 jars. 2 are full of teeth. Need new socks." That one never panned out, but she did buy new socks. Quirky detail of the day, at one point. Janey started sleeping with a bag of frozen peas on her forehead, not for any medical reason. She said it helped cool the spooky thoughts, which is now my personal philosophy. She was becoming infamous in very small circles. Her boss at Bargain Bucket asked if she could stop getting witch mail at the store. Apparently, someone had sent her a dream catcher soaked in rosemary oil and a note that just said, "Sleep louder." Janey put in for unpaid leave. Because the dreams weren't slowing down. They were getting bolder, and so was the FBI. By October, Janey Whitmore had officially become that woman the FBI won't stop calling. Her neighbors assumed she was in witness protection. Her grocery store co-workers theorized she was dating an agent. One older man named Ralph insisted loudly at every staff meeting that she was part lizard, which was not helpful, but definitely on brand for Ralph. Janey didn't bother correcting any of them, because the truth was weirder. After the cellar dream helped save a life, the FBI stopped pretending she was just a quirky coincidence. Now, they treated her like a cross between a confidential informant and a sentient satellite dish. And Janey, who had once cried during a Subaru commercial, was starting to really not enjoy the attention. So when she had her next dream, she almost didn't tell anyone. It was simple this time. Quiet. A house with peeling green shutters. A refrigerator humming. A man standing in the kitchen holding a hammer. She couldn't see his face, but she knew somehow that something bad was going to happen there in exactly 3 days. She woke up with that greasy dread feeling, like forgetting your wallet, or realizing you've replied all to a thread about your boss. She did what anyone would do. Made coffee. Ate a banana that was more ambition than fruit, and debated whether to call the FBI or just binge a baking show and pretend she dreamed about croissants. Eventually, she called. When Agent Reeves answered, Janey blurted, "Okay, I dreamed about a house, a hammer, and a time stamp. I don't know where it is, but someone's about to get very murdered." Reeves asked for every detail. Janey described the wallpaper, the window trim, the sad potted plant in the corner. The next day, the FBI identified the house from a tip they were already chasing. 2 agents went to investigate. They knocked. Got no answer. Walked around the back. Saw blood on the window ledge. They kicked in the door. Inside a man, duct-taped to a chair, and another man startled, holding a hammer. Janey had predicted the scene down to the moldy apple on the kitchen counter. And that's when things went sideways. Because the FBI didn't say thank you, they didn't send her another glitter mug. Instead, they opened an official file. On her, Janey found out the fun way. One of the local detectives she'd spoken to early on, Detective Amari, friendly guy. Loved gum, called her personally. "Hey, Whitmore," he said. "Just a heads up, they've listed you in the bureau system as a spontaneous predictive anomaly." Janey blinked. A what now? Basically means they don't think you're doing the crimes, but they also don't think you're not involved. Double negative. Love that. Yeah. Also, they're not thrilled about you talking to state law enforcement anymore. You're technically above my clearance level now. Fantastic, she said. Should I start wearing sunglasses and whispering about national security? He didn't laugh. Neither did she. Because here's the thing. Once the FBI thinks you might be predicting crime, they start wondering how you're doing it. Are you hacked, mind-controlled part of a secret rogue agency, tuned into the collective unconscious like a backup USB drive from Carl Jung himself? And here's a fun academic debate to stir in your sleepy tea tonight. There's an ongoing argument in neuroscience over whether the brain can tap into nonlinear time perception during REM cycles. Some believe dreams are fragments of the past memories reassembled. Others believe they may simulate possible futures based on subconscious pattern recognition. But a few, out on the fringe, suggest that under unknown conditions, REM sleep might allow temporal leakage. Janey, unfortunately, had become the case study no one wanted to publish. One night, she went to sleep thinking about nothing in particular, woke up in a cold sweat at 3:03 a.m. Because the dream was wrong. It was short, blurry, but vivid. She was holding a knife. There was someone on the floor, blood everywhere, and a mirror in front of her. She couldn't see the face, but she could feel something behind her. Watching. When she woke, her bedsheets were damp and twisted. Her hands shook. She checked her kitchen. No knife missing. Checked her door. Still locked. But in the bathroom, there was a faint smear of something on the mirror. Too faint to tell if it was blood, or ketchup, or fear. She sat on the edge of the bathtub for 20 minutes, breathing like she was in a freediving competition she didn't sign up for. Later that morning, Agent Lowe knocked on her door. He wasn't smiling this time. "We need to ask you about your latest dream," he said. "Did you contact anyone?" "No," she said. "I thought maybe it was just me losing it." He nodded. Grave. There was an incident last night. In Pennsylvania. A woman stabbed a man in a hotel. She claims she was possessed by a dream. Her name's also Janey. Janey stared at him. "Are you joking?" "No," he said. "And she looks a lot like you." Cue the horror music. It turned out the woman's full name was Janey Whitmore, a second cousin, twice removed. They'd never met. But she did work in a grocery store, had a cat, and kept a dream journal. Coincidence? The Bureau didn't think so. They started asking if Janey had ever experienced fugue states, memory lapses, blackouts. She hadn't, but now she doubted herself. That's how paranoia works. You don't have to be guilty. You just have to be tired enough to wonder if maybe you could be. So when Janey received an email a few days later that read, "Stop dreaming. They're watching." She unplugged her router, threw her laptop in the closet, and went back to paper crossword puzzles. Safer, mostly. The next time Janey Whitmore saw the FBI, they brought donuts. That alone should have been a red flag. Because when federal agents show up with a pink box of sugar and sprinkles, you're either about to be recruited or quietly erased. They sat on her couch. Agent Reeves balanced a jelly donut on her knee like she was hosting a very tense brunch. Agent Lowe looked more tired than usual, like maybe he had started dreaming crime scenes too. "We have a new case," he said. "And we need your help." Janey blinked. "You people are exhausting. Can't I just go back to being a grocery store cryptid?" Reeves slid a folder across the coffee table. Inside a map, a list of missing persons, and a photo. It was a child. 7, maybe 8 years old. Raincoat, yellow. Face blurred out, like the universe didn't want to commit to specifics. "We're not sure he exists," Lowe said. "Then how is he missing? We have 10 separate witnesses from different states describing him in dreams. Always the same yellow raincoat, standing in a flooded street. One of them was in a coma." Janey felt her stomach drop, like a cartoon character realizing gravity is a thing. "I've seen him," she said. The room fell silent. Even Tallulah, who had just been assaulting a houseplant, froze. "You're sure Reeves asked?" "Yeah. Last night. He was standing under a street lamp, water up to his ankles. Said nothing. Just looked at me. And then," she trailed off. "What Lowe asked. Behind him," she whispered. "There was a figure. Huge. All in black. But it didn't reflect in the water." Lowe scribbled something in his notebook like he was updating the plot of a psychological horror film that got out of hand. Janey pressed her hands into her temples. "I didn't tell anyone. I thought it was just another weird dream. Like the one where I'm dating a werewolf barista." Reeves leaned forward. "We think this child may be the key to an unsolved cluster of disappearances in the 1990s. The raincoat matches a boy who vanished in 1998 during a storm in Missouri. But the kid in your dream is still the same age." Janey's voice dropped. "So either he's trapped in a dream loop, or I'm going insane with a 90s aesthetic." Fun fact break: in 1998, researchers at the University of Arizona ran an experiment on shared dreaming using groups of participants under monitored sleep cycles. While most of the results were inconclusive, a surprising number of subjects independently reported the same symbol, a yellow raincoat hanging from a tree. The experiment was quietly discontinued. This, of course, has sparked endless debate about whether dream environments are solely personal or shared subconscious architecture. Back in Janey's living room, the donuts were sweating. "We'd like you to participate in a controlled dream sequence," Lowe said. "A what now?" "A monitored sleep cycle. You'll be in a controlled room, with biometric sensors. No drugs, just REM observation. We want to see what you see." Janey sighed. "Do I at least get to keep the donut box?" The facility they brought her to looked like an IKEA, had a nervous breakdown, and married a dentist's office. Everything was beige, clean, and vaguely Scandinavian. The sleep lab technician was named Kyle, had the posture of a tulip, and offered her chamomile tea with too much eye contact. "Just relax," he said. "And if you see anything unusual, say, blueberry. That's our safety word." "Why blueberry?" "Because help I'm dreaming of a murder again doesn't fit on the EEG chart." Janey changed into the provided pajamas, which were, in fact, just medical scrubs that made her look like a dentist about to lose her license. She lay on the padded bed, electrodes stuck to her temples like sci-fi acne. "Lights will dim in 3, Kyle said. 2, 1, darkness, silence, then the dream. She was in a school gym. Balloons, folded chairs, a table full of juice boxes, and was that meatloaf? There were people milling around, but none had faces. Then she saw him, the boy in the yellow raincoat. He was standing near the back, holding a small plastic whistle. He pointed to the exit. Janey turned. There was a wall of water, frozen mid-crash, like someone had hit pause. In it, faces, twisted, drowning. She tried to scream blueberry, but her voice came out in reverse. Then, a figure behind her. A whisper in her ear. Not the boy, the one behind the boy. She jolted awake with a scream that ripped her throat. Kyle was already there, hands on the emergency call button. "Jesus," he gasped. "Your vitals spiked. You flatlined for 90 seconds. Janey blinked. "What? You stopped breathing?" "Then this is insane," you muttered Latin. "In your sleep." "Perfectly. Latin." He nodded. "We recorded it. It translates roughly to, 'Beware the tide that remembers.'" Because of course it did. Quirky detail of the day. One of the nurses brought Janey a get-well-soon cupcake with a tiny yellow raincoat made of fondant on top. Which, honestly, is either the best or worst gift depending on your psychological stability. When Janey got home, there was a letter taped to her door. Typed, no return address. You're not the only one who dreams of him. Stop looking. No signature. Janey didn't sleep that night, but the boy in the yellow raincoat, he showed up anyway. Janey Whitmore did not wake up screaming, because she didn't wake up at all. Not in the normal, sit up in bed and wonder if you left the stove on way. Instead, she became aware mid-dream of being in a place her body had never been. She was walking through a hallway that smelled like old pennies and elementary school chicken nuggets. The walls were cinder block, painted beige, like an abandoned DMV had given up halfway through its makeover. Fluorescent lights above buzzed like gossiping wasps. Down the corridor, the boy in the yellow raincoat waited. This time, he had no face, just a blur. A blur shaped like worry. He raised his hand. Behind him a door, a heavy metal one, hospital grade, with peeling blue paint. On it, room 206B. She reached for the knob and woke up in her living room, on the floor. Wrapped in a blanket she did not own, Tallulah sat on the coffee table, licking her paw like she hadn't just watched her owner dream herself into a different dimension. Janey stared at the blanket. It was blue, wool, smelled faintly of cedar and menthol. She turned it over. Stitched into the corner property of Mercy Pines Institute. Room 206B. Now, here's the fun part. Mercy Pines was a real place. An old psychiatric facility closed in 2003 due to structural decay and multiple ethical violations. It was located 3 hours from Akron. And according to local legend, it was haunted by the ghost of a night nurse who didn't know how to clock out. There was also, according to public records, no room 206B, which made Janey deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. Naturally, she called Agent Reeves, who didn't answer. Instead, she got a call from someone new, blocked number, male voice, cheerful in a smile while you ruined someone's life kind of way. Ms. Whitmore, we'd appreciate it if you refrained from discussing Mercy Pines with federal staff. This is not a polite request. Janey hung up, then texted Reeves, who the hell is room 206B? No response. Instead, someone left a package on her front porch. Inside a laminated visitor badge from Mercy Pines, dated October 3rd, 1998. Her name was on it, in her own handwriting. Only problem, in 1998, she was in junior high, eating fruit gushers and worrying about whether her Tamagotchi was dead or just sleeping. This was no longer just about dreams. Now she had physical evidence that her subconscious was screwing with time and space like it was a folding table. She did what any stable adult would do. She poured cereal into a mixing bowl, ate it dry with a soup spoon, and called Detective Amari. Hey, she said, trying to sound casual. Do you know anything about Mercy Pines? A long pause. You mean the place that shut down because a bunch of patients disappeared from locked rooms? Janey stopped chewing. I did not know that. Actually, please continue. Not officially solved, Amari said. But there was one staff member who turned up a few years later, claiming she dreamed the whole thing, like she'd fallen asleep in 1998 and woken up in 2010. Name. Sorry, Amari said. That file's sealed tighter than a Tupperware full of government cheese. Janey hung up and did the only rational thing left. She drove to Mercy Pines. The building stood like a monument to someone else's nightmare. Chain-link fence, broken windows, vines climbing the brick like they were trying to escape. She parked across the street and waited. At 3:06 p.m., don't ask her why. It just felt right. She walked up to the gate. There was a hole. Of course there was a hole. Abandoned places are always helpfully vandalized by plot-relevant teenagers. Inside, the air was colder. Moustier. Smelled like mildew and old bedpans. She walked the hall slowly, found a burned-out sign that read East Wing Rooms 200-202-10. Bingo. Room 206 was there. But instead of 206B, the door had a strange extra hinge, like there'd once been a partition. She pushed it open. Inside dust, rotted furniture, a cracked mirror, and on the floor, a red whistle, just like the boy in the raincoat had been holding. She didn't touch it. She wasn't stupid. Instead, she snapped a photo and got the hell out of there, like the floor was made of legally binding hauntings. Later that night, she uploaded the photo to her laptop. But when she opened the file, the whistle wasn't there, just an empty room. She blinked, checked the metadata, reopened the image. Still gone. She looked down at her desk. The whistle was sitting beside her keyboard. No sound, no movement, just there. And that's when the email arrived. No sender, no subject, just a sentence. He remembers you. She shut the laptop, sat very still, breathed like she was hiding in a nature documentary. Academic digression of the day. In certain branches of quantum cognition theory, there's a suggestion that information accessed during altered mental states, dreams, hallucinations, meditations may represent not hallucinations, but non-local consciousness phenomena. Basically, your mind might be fishing in waters you don't remember sailing to. Janey poured herself a shot of mouthwash and drank it like it was vodka. Because if room 206B was real, and if she'd somehow been there, then she wasn't just dreaming crime anymore. She might be returning to them. Janey Whitmore hadn't planned to get famous for dreaming about murder, honestly. If she'd had a choice, she would have preferred going viral for a video of her cat knocking over a blender. Or maybe for her unpopular opinion that mint chocolate chip is just toothpaste, pretending to be dessert. But instead, she was now the reluctant poster child for paranormal crime fighting, and someone wanted to cash in. It started with an email from a woman named Sherry Goldstein. Her subject line was, "Let's turn your nightmares into brand deals." Janey almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of her. Sherry claimed to represent Dreamwave Talent, a boutique agency for intuitives, empaths, and influencer psychics. She wanted to represent Janey's brand. She said there was serious content potential in murder dreams, especially if Janey could pivot to inspirational messaging between nightmares. Janey stared at the email for a long time before replying with a single sentence. "Ma'am, I once dreamed of a man being dismembered by an office chair. I don't think that's brand friendly, but that didn't stop others." She started getting packages, a box of prepackaged sage bundles from a subscription service called Vibe Cleanse, a letter from a YouTuber with 3 million followers who wanted to do a collab titled "Reacting to Dream Crimes While Eating Spicy Wings," even a sponsored sleep mask embroidered with the phrase, "Don't wake me unless there's blood." Tallulah wore it once and immediately walked into a wall. Then it got weirder. Janey received a call from a man who claimed to be part of the North American Clairvoyance Guild. "Technically," he said, "we're like the ARP but for dreams and shadow prophecies." He introduced himself as Ezekiel Moon, and honestly, that name alone should have disqualified him from being taken seriously. He invited her to a private Zoom call with the council. Janey joined out of sheer morbid curiosity. The council meeting featured 6 people. A man in a wizard hat named Bill, who mostly talked about ley lines and lasagna. A woman with 3 cats in frame who claimed one of them could detect ghosts. A teenager from Sweden who said he'd dreamed of Beyoncé fighting a shadow demon and believed it was a message for humanity. And then there was Darla, the arch-empath, who claimed Janey's dream state was leaking into the spiritual multi-stream. Janey muted herself and ate an entire Pop-Tart while watching the call descend into chaos. At one point, someone offered her $400 to channel lottery numbers. She left the Zoom, closed her laptop, and yelled into a pillow for 10 seconds. Because here's the truth. No one warned her about once people think you know things they don't. They'll demand you keep knowing them. Even if it's ruining your life. The FBI wasn't happy about the attention either. Agent Reeves left her a voicemail that began with, "We're not saying you're under surveillance again, but maybe cool it with the ghost Zooms." Okay. Meanwhile, Janey couldn't sleep through a single night without waking up gasping and covered in sweat. The dreams were stacking now. Not just one crime per night, multiple. Rapid fire. Flashbulb memories of terrible things. A field with shallow graves and broken dolls. A man screaming in Morse code. a subway platform, and a handprint in blood on the window. She started writing them all down in what she now called her guilt notebook. One entry simply read, "Don't trust the woman in the velvet shoes. She smiles too wide." Another read, "Something is wrong with Tuesdays. Tell Carl." There was no Carl. She checked. Despite her attempt to lay low, the story leaked. Someone from the FBI must have talked, or maybe one of the Zoom weirdos had a TikTok following. Suddenly, Janey's inbox exploded. Journalists, paranormal enthusiasts, a woman who claimed to be her reincarnated dream self from a higher density realm named Tundra 6. But the email that really threw her came from a small podcast host named Greg, who ran a show called Missing Sleep. Greg said, "I think you helped solve my cousin's murder last month. The details you described match exactly. I wanted to thank you. But also, can I ask something weird? Did you dream about a window with teeth?" Janey nearly dropped her phone. She had dreamed of that just 3 nights ago. A cracked window with jagged glass that looked like fangs. She wrote back, "Yes, why?" Greg replied, "Because I think that's where he died. The room with the teeth." Janey didn't answer. She didn't know how. True story insert. There's a well-documented phenomenon in criminology known as dream confessions. In several real-world cases, individuals have reported details about crimes they supposedly had no access to, sometimes through dreams. The legal system typically ignores these as inadmissible, but in at least 3 known cases, Canada, the UK, and Argentina, the dream information led to physical evidence. Janey couldn't tell if she was reading crime scenes or being written into them. She stopped going outside, bought blackout curtains, started sleeping in a closet. "Every night," she whispered, "please be about kittens." But it never was. The dreams came anyway, and one of them said, "You're not dreaming them. You're remembering." By the time Janey Whitmore received the manila envelope, she'd started sleeping in short bursts, 20 minutes at a time, like a soldier in enemy territory or a college student who lived off shame and instant noodles. The envelope was left on her back porch, sandwiched between a bag of cat litter and a very dead fern. No return address. Just her name, written in red Sharpie. Inside were 4 photographs, all grainy, all surveillance style. One showed her entering Bargain Bucket in April. One was her exiting the Mercy Pines facility. One was her asleep in her bed. And the fourth was not her. It was a woman who looked exactly like her, standing in front of an old rotary phone and wearing a hospital bracelet that said, "Whitmore. J. Admitted. October 1998. Janey didn't even have the strength to scream. She just slid down the wall until she hit the floor and said, "Cool. Time loop clone conspiracy." That's a new one. A note was paperclipped to the last photo, "Do not talk about the dream from last Thursday." They're listening. Which was a problem, because Thursday's dream, that was the one that had the FBI really rattled. She hadn't told anyone about it yet. Not Agent Reeves, not her increasingly skeptical cat, not even her guilt notebook. Because the Thursday dream had been too real. In the dream, she had stood in a tiled bathroom. Old, faded green. A man's voice behind her whispered, "He's going to take the child." Janey. She turned. The boy in the raincoat was there, crying, and next to him a woman in velvet shoes, smiling, too wide. Velvet Shoes Lady reached down and unzippered the boy's shadow like it was a coat, then stepped into it. And Janey had screamed until her teeth cracked. When she woke, her jaw hurt. The dentist confirmed a microfracture. So, yeah, maybe that was one to keep to herself. But someone clearly knew, because that same day, Agent Lowe showed up at her door looking like someone had put his soul through a paper shredder. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. He dropped a folder on her table, inside black and white stills from a traffic camera. A woman matching Janey's exact description, walking barefoot down the side of I-76 at 2:43 a.m., holding hands with the boy in the raincoat. But that's not she started. It's time-stamped during your sleep cycle, Lowe said. Janey just stared. I was in bed. Janey. Lowe hesitated, like he was trying to word-wrap a nuclear bomb. We've been tracking 2 sets of biometric activity from you. What does that mean? It means, he said this slowly, that someone else is waking up when you go to sleep. Cue the slow zoom horror music. She laughed. It was short and cracked in the middle. Oh, great. I've got a part-time body double from the upside down. We don't think it's a clone, Lowe said. We think it's you, but displaced. Bleeding through from another. He paused, state of consciousness. Like another dimension. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a recording device. 3 nights ago. We tapped your phone as part of standard monitoring. Comforting. We got this. He played the recording. It was her voice. Soft. Slurred. Like she was speaking in her sleep, but the words made no sense. The raincoat peels. The tide sings. Room 206 is wet with remembering. The velvet smile eats names. Then a pause. Then a whisper. Don't let them touch the dream spine. Janey blinked. The what now? Lowe shut off the recorder. You tell me. She didn't. Because she couldn't. Because what even was a dream spine? And why did it sound like something that should be kept in a safe wrapped in garlic and legal red tape? Academic detour. In theoretical dream logic, yes. It's a real field kind of. There's an idea called the continuity kernel hypothesis. It suggests that our minds preserve a constant, subconscious self-identity marker, even through fragmented dreams. That marker, nicknamed the spine, is how your brain knows you are you, no matter how weird the dream gets. Some fringe theorists believe that under trauma or stress, the kernel can split, allowing multiple dream identities to exist and possibly interact. Which was not helpful, because according to Lowe, Janey might be leaking, not just dreaming about crimes, but becoming an access point for something or someone else. That night, she left her lights on. She wrapped herself in every blanket she owned. She set alarms for every 25 minutes and recorded herself with her phone camera, just in case she sleepwalked into a second life. At 3:17 a.m., she woke up gagging, a taste of salt in her mouth. Not blood, not water. Salt! Her fingernails were dirty, like she'd been digging. Her feet were wet. She checked the footage on her phone. The recording showed her sitting up at 2:58 a.m., eyes wide open. She looked straight into the camera and said, Room 206B is full. Then lay back down. Janey deleted the video, but not before forwarding it to Agent Reeves with a single word. Help! There was no reply, but a new voicemail arrived 5 minutes later. It was just a voice whispering, We told you not to look. And that was the moment Janey realized. Someone or something was no longer just watching her dreams. They were living in them. When Janey Whitmore started dreaming in rhyme, she knew she was in trouble. Not I forgot to file my taxes trouble. More like I might be the central node in a multidimensional nightmare lattice trouble. The dream began, as many of them did now, in a place she'd never been but deeply recognized. This time it was an abandoned daycare, pastel walls, a rotting rocking horse, alphabet blocks spelling run. The smell was Play-Doh and mildew. A gentle lullaby played from nowhere and everywhere at once, and then voices, children chanting in unison, velvet shoes and teeth so white. She walks the dreams in dead of night. If you hear her tapping near, close your eyes and disappear. Janey jerked awake with the rhythm still stuck in her head, like a broken pop song that now doubled as an existential warning. She was soaked in sweat, and new twist, there was a handprint on the ceiling above her bed. It was her handprint. How did she know? Because she had a tiny freckle on her right pinky knuckle. And the print had it. She didn't scream. Screaming had long since passed its usefulness. She made coffee instead. 2 cups. No cream. All despair. At 9:12 a.m., she got a call from Agent Reeves. We need to talk about the chlorine, Reeves said. Janey blinked. That's an aggressive greeting. You dreamed of chlorine last week. Yeah. There was a pool in one of the dreams. Why? There was a freezer truck discovered yesterday in Georgia, Reeves said. It was hidden behind an abandoned motel, full of missing persons. All the bodies were saturated in chlorinated water. Janey stared at the microwave clock. The seconds blinked in mockery. There was a rhyme, she mumbled, in the dream, about velvet shoes. Reeves didn't respond right away. Then, the words match a Cold War-era psychological ops experiment called Project Carousel. Coded dream rhymes used to embed information in deep sleep for operatives. Highly experimental. Possibly myth. Where did you hear it? I didn't. I dreamed it. Reeves sighed. Then we have a bigger problem. Here's the thing about Project Carousel. It was rumored to be a U.S. and Soviet collaboration in the 1970s to create a joint dream manipulation framework. According to declassified whispers and one very defensive ex-linguist on Reddit, Carousel used dream rhymes to trigger sleeper agents, literally. If Janey's subconscious was generating the rhymes independently, she might not be dreaming crimes. She might be accessing a shared data stream no one had plugged in since the Cold War. Or worse, someone had plugged it back in. Quirky detour. The original Carousel documents allegedly referred to dreams as nocturnal mirrors with incomplete grammar. This sounds like a poetry chapbook, but was actually a term for memories that hadn't happened yet, which makes sense to exactly no one. Janey started to keep her voice recorder on 24/7. She wanted to capture everything, even the stuff that didn't make sense. Especially the stuff that didn't make sense. She played back one recording from a nap on her couch. It started normal snoring, cat meows, the crinkle of a granola bar wrapper. Then suddenly her voice, mid-dream, find the girl with the jelly bean scar. She knows the key to the freezer, which sounded like Mad Libs at first, until Janey remembered something. At Bargain Bucket, there was a woman who came in weekly with a strange scar on her neck, shaped vaguely like a jelly bean. Janey had always thought it looked oddly symmetrical, like it had been made by design, not accident. She hadn't seen her in months. That night, she went back to the store, told herself it was for groceries, told herself she was still normal, but as she walked down the canned soup aisle, she felt it that weird, static tingle behind her eyes, like she was seeing two versions of reality at once. In one version, the aisle was empty. In the other, the floor was flooded with ankle-deep water, and the boy in the yellow raincoat was staring at her from the end of the row. He held up a jar, inside a human tooth. She blinked. He was gone. So was the water. The jar was still there, just sitting in front of the lentil soup. Janey picked it up, wrapped it in a kitchen towel, and didn't speak for the rest of the night. At 3:30 a.m., her phone rang. Caller ID said unknown entity, which is not a normal phone feature. She answered anyway, because, let's be honest, she wasn't exactly winning at safety anymore. A child's voice whispered, "You're not waking up. You're sleeping forward." She hung up, turned her phone off, buried it in the litter box. Tallulah looked at her with silent judgment. The next day, she received an envelope via certified mail. It contained only one thing: a photocopy of a psychological intake form from Mercy Pines. At the top, her name. The date October 15th, 1998. Under reason for admission, the form read, "Patient claims to dream of crimes not yet committed. Uses terms consistent with Operation Carousel protocols. Recommends containment." At the bottom was a signature Dr. E. Moon. She remembered that name. Ezekiel Moon. From the Zoom. The wizard hat. Which meant either he was a very committed LARPer, or he was something else entirely. She found his number, called him. "Moon speaking," he said cheerfully. "Would you like to schedule a reading or report an omen?" "It's me, Janey." He paused. "Oh, you're still lucid. That's good." "What is Carousel?" He sighed. "That's complicated. Try me. You ever hear the phrase, 'Don't remember who you were before the sleep took you'?" "No." "Good," he said. "That means they didn't finish the reset." Janey stared at her wall. It looked back. Moon continued. "You weren't just a patient at Mercy Pines. You were an anchor, the thing that holds the bridge. That's why they called it Room 206B. B for back door. You were the door. Janey, you still are." "Door to what?" To the stream, he said softly. The dreaming river. The shared space where memory, possibility, and prophecy mix. She laughed. She didn't mean to, but it sounded like a cough made of disbelief and too much caffeine. This is ridiculous. I know. Moon said, but if you ever see the velvet shoes again, run. Then he hung up. That night, Janey didn't sleep, but the velvet shoes still found her. This time, they were waiting in the hallway outside her room, facing inward, like something was already inside. Janey Whitmore agreed to the sleep study because at that point, what else was she going to do? She was exhausted. Not in the fun, nap on the couch and drool way, but in the my neurons are held together by soup and spite kind of way. Also, Agent Reeves offered snacks and a controlled REM environment, and most importantly, a full-spectrum dream EEG under sedation that might prove she wasn't entirely losing her mind. The study was being conducted by a university neuropsychology lab in Massachusetts. The building looked like a science museum that had recently fired all its decorators' gray walls, flickering lights, and furniture that suggested grant money panic buy. Janey was met by Dr. Rakesh Singh, a neurologist who wore a corduroy blazer and had the distinct energy of someone who collected haunted antique pencils. "We'll be running a 3-phase sleep architecture test," he said, like that was a thing people said in casual conversation. "I just want to not wake up in Latin," Janey replied. "Valid," he nodded. "We'll be observing your REM cycles with depth analysis. If we see anything anomalous, we'll record it." "Define anomalous." "Anything that doesn't act like a brain should," he said, cheerfully. The lab room was sterile, but cozy-ish, like a hotel room designed by a robot that had only seen brochures of comfort. There was a bed, a camera, and enough electrodes to turn Janey into a small human Christmas tree. "Do I get a safety word again?" she asked. Singh handed her a little red button. "If things get too intense, push this. It'll alert the team and wake you up. Think of it as your panic popcorn." "Wonderful. I love popcorn and dread." Quirky real-world aside, in certain advanced neuroimaging facilities, there have been documented cases of subjects exhibiting anomalous neural coherence during dreams, meaning brain regions synchronized in ways we don't fully understand. Some researchers speculate it may hint at temporary hypercognition. Others say the brain is just weird and loves jazz. Janey lay down. The machine hummed softly. The lights dimmed, and she slept immediately. The dream dropped her into a vast field of white sand. Wind whispered in a language made of sighs. Far in the distance, a tower made of bones and radio antennae, and beneath her feet, engraved in the sand, were the words, "Open spine. Anschurge Tlarm. Do not fold." A figure stood on the horizon. The boy, raincoat still yellow, still dry in a place with no water. He raised a hand. Behind him, the velvet shoes lady. Only this time, Janey saw her face. It was her own. Smiling, too wide. Teeth too neat. Eyes empty of self. Janey screamed in the dream. In the lab, her body jerked once. Her vitals spiked. Dr. Singh and his team leaned in. The EEG machine began printing symbols. Not waveforms. Not charts. Symbols. A spiral. A key. The number 43 written backward. Then the machine sparked. Lights flickered. The printer spat out one last image. A map of Mercy Pines, with room 206B circled in red. In the dream, Janey tried to run, but her feet sank into the sand. The velvet shoes lady reached out, fingers stretching like shadows into thread. "You are the spine," she whispered. "They broke you open to look inside." Janey slammed the red panic button. In the real world, alarms blared. She gasped awake, nearly dislodging 3 sensors and one very startled intern named Cora. Singh knelt beside her. "What did you see?" Janey coughed. "Myself. But wrong. A place with sand and bones and—" She said, "I'm the spine." Singh held up the printout from the EEG machine. "Your brain generated this." Janey stared at it. "Why does my subconscious have cartography skills?" Singh didn't laugh. Instead, he showed her something else. The data log. During her REM spike, the machine registered a second set of brainwaves, overlaying her own. Dual consciousness, Singh said quietly. We've never seen anything like it. It's like someone or something was dreaming with you. Maybe even through you. Janey sat up. Could it be projecting memories someone else's? Singh nodded slowly, or channeling a shared state of consciousness. A dream commons. A layered signal. Janey felt dizzy. What happens if I keep dreaming like this? We don't know, he said. Which is never what you want your neurologist to say. Janey spent the next hour reviewing the data. Every dream cycle, every visual artifact, even the mysterious number 43, which showed up repeatedly. She asked Singh if it meant anything. He shrugged. Could be a frequency, or an internal marker, or a file number from wherever this signal originated. So I'm a haunted radio tower now, essentially, outside. It was raining when she left the facility. She hadn't seen rain in weeks. But now, the streets glistened, and she swore. In a puddle by the curb. She saw a child's red whistle floating. She didn't pick it up. She just walked home and didn't talk to anyone for the rest of the day, except for the voice that spoke when she turned off the lights. From the closet, quiet, calm. Room 206B is awake again, and it remembers your name. At precisely 4:06, Janey Whitmore dreamed of SeaWorld exploding. She'd never been to SeaWorld, had never particularly liked dolphins, thought orcas were impressive but emotionally manipulative in the same way teenage boyfriends could be. Still, the dream was vivid. She was seated in the stands, plastic bleachers, popcorn, a child screaming happily somewhere to her left. The water in the performance tank looked off thicker, darker, almost syrupy. A trainer was holding a red whistle and a bucket of fish. The crowd began to clap. Then the dolphin launched into the air and exploded mid-arc, shrapnel, screaming, and then laughter. Slow, sarcastic applause echoing from the loudspeakers. Behind the smoke stood a figure in a black wetsuit, velvet shoes glinting under fluorescent lights, and instead of a face, a static blur. Janey woke up and screamed into a pillow so as not to alert Tallulah, who had recently developed a dramatic flop reflex whenever startled. At 6:12 a.m., she called Agent Reeves. Okay, this is going to sound like a fever dream, but someone's going to blow up SeaWorld. Reeves, who sounded like she hadn't slept since Nixon resigned, sighed. Which location? What? There are 5 SeaWorlds, San Diego, San Antonio, Orlando, and 2 defunct ones with empty tanks and local raccoon populations. San Antonio, Janey said without hesitation. I saw a barbecue billboard in the background. Reeves didn't even question that. I'll inform DHS and local PD, she said. They'll probably roll their eyes. They always do. Tell them not to ignore the red whistle, Janey said. It's important. Janey hung up and tried to go back to sleep. But something about dolphin shrapnel and eerily specific regional advertising makes rest difficult. So she made toast. 3 slices. Ate 1. Burned the other 2. Took that as an omen and just drank almond milk out of the carton like a raccoon with manners. At 10:35 a.m., she received a text. Unknown number. You shouldn't have warned them. We were so close. She dropped her phone, stepped back, then slowly picked it up with a spatula like she was disarming a crab with emotional baggage. By noon, it was on the news. A suspicious package had been found under the bleachers of SeaWorld San Antonio. It was constructed from household chemicals, foil, and a red whistle as a detonator. It had been diffused in time. No one injured, no dolphins harmed. Though one sea lion had allegedly thrown a fish at the bomb squad, which felt metaphorically appropriate. The headlines didn't mention Janey, but she knew. She'd seen it coming. Again. Later that day, Agent Lowe called. He didn't even say hello. Do you know what was on the whistle? He asked. Whale spit and doom. It had numbers engraved into the plastic, he said. Hand-carved. Guess what number? Repeated. 43, she said. Bingo. He paused. There's something else. The bomb was placed under bleacher seat B206. Janey went quiet. That's not a coincidence. Lowe said, "This is personal." It always was. The phrase haunted her all day. Room B206, seat B206. She started to wonder, was the world folding in on itself? Or was she expanding through it? And if she was now seeing events before they happened, how long before she stopped seeing through her own eyes altogether? Around 3 p.m., she received a manila envelope on her doorstep. No return address, no postage. Inside a hand-drawn diagram of a theme park, SeaWorld, with notes scribbled in red. Not the bomb, the distraction. Look beneath the tank. And one more line, "You still haven't remembered what you did." She stared at that sentence for a long time, because something had been gnawing at her. The sense that the dreams were less like predictions and more like replays, like déjà vu that overstayed its welcome. So she did something reckless. She booked a flight to San Antonio. On arrival, she pretended to be a food vendor intern, which, surprisingly, required only a clipboard, a smudge of mustard, and confidence. She made her way to the tank, the same one from the dream, waited until a guard turned his back, slipped down the side path. Behind the filtration unit, she found a steel hatch half buried in gravel. It was locked, but next to it, spray-painted hastily, was the word, spine. She crouched, looked closer, etched into the metal, property of Mercy Pines Institute. Her breath caught. The back of her neck tingled like she was being watched by an unlicensed dimension. She didn't open the hatch. She couldn't. Not without tools. Not without backup. But she took photos. When she sent them to Agent Reeves, she received a one-line reply. "You need to come in. Now." So she did. Back at the Bureau's Ohio field office. They didn't even make her go through security. Just escorted her to a dim, windowless room and handed her a file. Inside, transcripts, logs, old memos, all about Project Carousel. Her name appeared on page 3. Subject 43. Whitmore, Janey, Anchor Type Receptor. Admittance, October 1998. Purpose, Memory Catcher, Dream Recorder. Do not activate unless Layer 2 breaches Layer 1. She looked up at Reeves. "I was part of this." "Yes. I was 7 years old in 1998. Reeves nodded. "That's why you were perfect." Janey swallowed. Her voice cracked. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because we thought it hadn't worked. That your memory walls held." Lowe entered the room then, holding a small box. "We think SeaWorld was chosen because the tank's acoustic resonance can mimic theta wave frequencies." "Dream frequencies," Janey said. He nodded. Reeves added, "Whatever's trying to reach you, it's not done." Janey looked down at her hands. They were shaking. The dreams were changing, getting louder, more organized. She wasn't just watching anymore. She was participating, and someone or something wanted her to remember why. The morning Janey Whitmore went viral. She was in a porta-potty behind the FBI's Ohio field office, trying to eat a blueberry muffin and cry quietly. Unfortunately, someone had already left a GoPro stuck to the paper towel dispenser. The video hit Reddit before noon. Breaking FBI's dream woman, seen crying and eating muffins in time portal toilet. It had everything pathos, intrigue, crinkly muffin wrappers, and a 3-second shot where Janey looked directly into the camera and whispered, "There's no time." The tank is still humming. Within hours, Is Banana Leaks was trending because, for some reason, the FBI porta-potty had a sticker that said, "Banana-scented cleaning pods." The internet did what the internet does. It memed her. One post read, "Janey Whitmore, dream prophet, whistleblower, snack icon." And somehow, that was the least weird thing about her week, because after SeaWorld, the hatch, and the Mercy Pines markings, the Bureau could no longer keep things classified without violating about 17 constitutional amendments and the Geneva Suggestion. So they pivoted. Hard. They made Janey the face of predictive dream anomaly research transparency, which is a long-winded way of saying they gave her a press conference. She stood behind a podium in a navy blazer that didn't fit because it was borrowed from a junior special agent, and told the American people, in the calmest tone she could manage, "Hi, I'm Janey. I sometimes dream crimes before they happen. It's not on purpose. I'm not magic. Please stop sending me boxes of teeth. Cue national media meltdown. Morning shows booked panels with psychics, neurologists, conspiracy theorists, and one man named Todd who claimed dolphins had installed memories in him via sonar. The public loved her, mostly because she seemed tired, and everyone relates to that. They gave her nicknames: Dreamy Janey, the REM Detective, the Sleepy Oracle, Muffin Spy. Someone launched a line of merch, t-shirts that read, "I dreamed this shirt, and don't wake me, unless it's a federal matter." She hated it, all of it, because while the internet was laughing, Janey was still dreaming. And the dreams were no longer just strange or violent. They were strategic, structured. The Velvet Shoes lady was speaking in full paragraphs now. Directives, instructions. "Open the hatch," she'd whispered last night. "It's not a door, it's a mirror." Even worse, Janey was starting to agree. Which is why, when the Senate Intelligence Committee summoned her for a closed-door testimony, she said yes. She arrived in Washington, D.C., wearing sunglasses, a borrowed trench coat, and a grim determination to not blurt out cryptic rhymes mid-question. The senators were skeptical, until she gave them 3 coordinates from a dream that morning. 2 matched known federal black sites. The third a decommissioned weather station in Montana where, according to DHS, nothing ever happens. 3 hours after her testimony, helicopters were in the air. They found a sealed hatch under the station, marked Project Carousel Anchor Point Beta. Inside, nothing. Just a single red whistle. And a shoe. Velvet. After that, they stopped doubting her. They promoted her. No, seriously. Janey Whitmore became the official director of primate relations. Why that title? Because the office didn't technically exist on the books, and it was the only label available on the clearance form from the SeaWorld incident. She was given a badge, a team, and an absurdly cold office in a basement filled with government-issue light bulbs and unresolved conspiracies. Her job: to receive and report dream transmissions relating to potential national security threats, interdimensional anomalies, and possibly aquatic mammals. She had a fax machine. No one knew why. Agent Reeves became her handler. Agent Lowe mostly hovered and looked stressed. Dr. Singh visited once, took one look at the wall of yarn-connected newspaper clippings Janey had assembled, and muttered, "We are so out of our depth." At least once a week, someone from Homeland Security stopped by to ask, "Have you dreamed of Ohio exploding?" So far she hadn't, but she had dreamed of Cleveland floating away on a giant slice of lasagna, which she dutifully logged in her dream incident binder, tabbed possible metaphors. Despite the promotion, Janey couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. The Velvet Shoes lady had grown bold. She now interrupted other dreams. She'd show up in the middle of a dream about a grocery store and just stand there, smiling. Janey tried to stay awake, but no matter how many alarms she set, how many cold showers she took, or how much instant espresso she injected into her bloodstream via yogurt spoon sleep came. And so did the whispers. "We are almost aligned. You are not dreaming. You are bleeding. Room 206B is ready for extraction." Extraction. Of what? That word repeated in her head all day. She wrote it on sticky notes, repeated it in the shower, found herself saying it aloud in line at Starbucks. The barista, unfazed, replied, "Cool. Do you want room for milk?" True scientific fact moment dream recall is strongest during REM rebound, the period after prolonged sleep deprivation. It's during this time that people report hyperlucid dreams, which often include elaborate narratives, nested dreams, and out-of-body experiences. Some researchers believe the brain uses REM rebound to flush excess cognitive stress. Others, they say that's when the walls between states of consciousness are weakest. Janey had stopped believing in walls entirely. One night, she received a delivery. No return address. Inside the package, a velvet shoe, wrapped in a page from her own guilt notebook. The page had been torn out, and on the back, someone had scrawled in red, "This is not your shoe. This is your reminder." Janey held the shoe for a long time, then placed it on her desk, right beside the red whistle, the whistle photo, and the grainy snapshot of her maybe clone walking down the interstate with the boy in the raincoat. She sat back, sipped coffee, and muttered, "Okay, Let's see what I remember next. When Janey Whitmore got the United Nations invitation, she thought it was spam. To be fair, it arrived via email, had 6 typos, and was signed by someone named Ambassador Jeff, which, frankly, sounded like a fake name from a guy who sells water filters at mall kiosks. But then the FBI confirmed it. UN Subcommittee on Nonlinear Threat Assessment. Closed session. Geneva. Topic: psychogenic anomalies and predictive consciousness. Janey's name was listed as a primary observer. She flew coach, because of course, the hotel had too many mirrors, and a minibar that contained exactly 1 weirdly warm can of prune soda and a copy of The Economist from 2007. The morning of the meeting, she was escorted into a room that smelled like ancient wood and diplomatic tension. Everyone had a headset. Everyone wore suits that made them look vaguely powerful and deeply constipated. Ambassador Jeff was real. He looked like someone had photoshopped a banker onto a piece of white toast and given him a degree in parapsychology. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, "we appreciate your participation. Your experience may help us prevent further, shall we say, unexpected transdimensional bleed-throughs." Janey blinked. That's a lot of syllables for bad dreams. A Belgian delegate leaned in. "You're not just dreaming. Ms. Whitmore, you're accessing signals. There's chatter in multiple countries, people seeing the boy in the raincoat. The Velvet Lady. Room 206B. Wait, other people are dreaming this stuff now." Ambassador Jeff nodded grimly. "We believe you're a dream node, an anchor. What you perceive becomes transmissible. You're the original broadcast." Janey rubbed her temples. "I'm not a radio tower. I'm a grocery store employee with high-functioning paranoia." "Well," Jeff said, flipping through a file, "you're also the only person to have flatlined during REM and spontaneously spoken a known Project Carousel encryption phrase. I also once ate an entire package of mini muffins while sleepwalking. Want to log that, too?" They did, probably. What Janey didn't tell them because she hadn't told anyone was that 2 nights ago, she had a new kind of dream. It didn't involve a crime, or a room, or a whisper. It was a crowd, thousands of people, marching silently across a flooded city, each one wearing her face, and every single one held a red whistle. The water rose around them. Still they marched. No sound. No resistance. At the front, the boy in the raincoat. He turned to face her, and behind him, her shadow smiled. That's why she'd agreed to Geneva, because something was changing. The dreams weren't warnings anymore. They were plans. After the meeting, she wandered the city, walked along the edge of Lake Geneva, let her mind drift, until she saw him, standing ankle-deep in the lake. Yellow raincoat, red whistle in hand. He didn't speak, just pointed behind her. Janey turned. A tallis gray building with no windows. On the door 206B, extraction room. She didn't remember walking inside. She just was. Fluorescent lights buzzed. The floor was linoleum. There was a humming sound, familiar now, dreamlike. At the center of the room, a chair, empty, straps dangling. On the wall, a mirror. She walked to it, saw herself, and herself smiled back. Only it wasn't her. It was Velvet Janey. Same face, same eyes, same scar on the left shoulder from when she fell off a bike at 12. But the smile was wide, unnatural. "Hello, spine," Mirror Janey said. Janey reached for the mirror. Her hand went through it. Velvet Janey stepped out, took her place, and whispered, "You've done enough remembering. I'll take it from here." Then the lights went out. She woke up screaming in her Geneva hotel bed. The phone rang. It was Agent Reeves. "We have a problem," she said. "There was a dream report out of Istanbul. A woman matching your description just walked into a hospital, spoke in tongues, and vanished." "What did she say?" Reeves paused. She said, "Tell the anchor the vessel has been upgraded. Extraction imminent." Janey hung up, threw water on her face. The mirror stared back, but for one brief, terrible second, her reflection didn't blink. She started to write everything down, not just in the guilt notebook, not on her phone, on paper, hidden, tucked into books, coats, freezer bags, behind her fridge, because if she couldn't stop what was coming, she had to leave a trail, A warning, and possibly a shopping list. She was low on oat milk. Quirky footnote. A 2014 French study on lucid dreamers found that a small percentage reported mirror anomalies, reflections that acted independently. The researchers dismissed it as hypnopompic distortion, but a few neuroscientists quietly suggested the possibility of self-modeling loops breaking down. Okay, your reflection might know something you don't. That night, Janey did not sleep. She rigged a series of alarms, caffeine microdoses, and even a YouTube playlist titled Extremely Loud Goat Screams Every 15 Minutes. Tallulah was not a fan, but even so, as 3:43 hit, she blinked and found herself standing in a field, white sand, tower in the distance, and behind her, soft steps. Velvet. She turned. Velvet Janey raised a hand, smiling. "I'm just keeping it warm," she said, and in her other hand a red whistle. Janey Whitmore was officially no longer trusted by the FBI, which was fair. She had, after all, told a Senate subcommittee that she might be leaking reality, then vanished from her hotel room for 6 hours, only to reappear at 4:17 a.m. behind a gelato stand in the Geneva airport, wearing someone else's shoes and holding a velvet ribbon tied around a laminated SeaWorld badge. She didn't remember any of it. Reeves and Lowe met her at the gate in D.C. They didn't speak until they were back in the car. Finally, Lowe said, "We're not sure you're you anymore." Janey looked out the window. "I'm as me as I can be while dreaming of myself stealing my own life. Someone accessed your badge credentials from room 206B, Reeves said, which, again, doesn't exist anymore. Then how are they using it? That's what we want you to tell us," Lowe snapped. Silence. Then Janey murmured, "They don't want the world, just my access to it." Back at Bureau HQ, they brought her not to her usual broom closet office, but to a place they called Archive Echo. It was a sub-basement level space that looked like a library built by people who were afraid of paper. Low lights, concrete walls, shelves upon shelves of redacted case files, weird geometry diagrams, and half-burnt dream journals. In the center of the room was a desk with a single beige folder, labeled Whitmore, Janey, Loop 43B, inside transcripts, dream logs, recordings, but not just hers. Dozens, different voices, different people, all describing the same images. The boy in the raincoat, the velvet shoes lady, room 206B, a whistle that stops time, and over again, the same ending. Then she took their place. Janey leaned back, heart thumping. "This is a pattern," she whispered. "A loop." Reeves nodded. "You're loop 43B. There were others." "How many?" 42 that we know of. "What happened to them?" "We don't know. That's why you're still in play." Then she showed Janey a photograph. It was grainy. From a 1991 surveillance camera inside an abandoned hotel in Serbia, it showed a girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old, walking down a hallway. Yellow raincoat, red whistle, barefoot. Behind her, velvet shoes. But this time, no face at all. Just static. "What is she?" Janey asked. Lowe said, "We believe she's a dream construct. A program. Designed to move between minds. She's not real. She's real enough to leave scars, and instructions, and sometimes corpses." Janey stared at the file in her hands. Loop 43B. That's what she was now. A loop. A record on repeat. Was she even the first version of herself? Had she been reset, rerun, re-rendered? "Why didn't you tell me?" Reeves looked genuinely sad for once. "Because every time someone finds out, it accelerates the collapse." Janey dropped the file. "Cool. So I'm basically a haunted DVD menu." "We think you're more than that," Reeves said. "We think you're the first to survive this long without being overwritten." "Great," Janey muttered. "Where's my trophy?" Or, a pizza. That night, back in her apartment, she found a package waiting. Same handwriting as the last. Inside a single cassette tape labeled, "Janey, Loop 28A, Final Transmission." She didn't own a cassette player, but the FBI did. They ran it through a digitizer. The audio began with static. Then a woman's voice. Her voice. "If you're hearing this, you survived longer than I did. A pause. Ragged breathing. The boy isn't a warning. He's the trigger. He starts the memory cascade. You have to ignore him. That's the only way. More static. Do not enter the mirror. That's where she builds the new shell. And finally, room 206B is where you end, and she begins. Janey sat there as the tape ended. The air felt heavy. Reeves leaned forward. This confirms what we feared. There is no one velvet shoes. She builds herself from each of you. Every time the loop resets. She gets smarter, low added. Which means you're the version closest to breaking her, or closest to becoming her, Janey said. That night, she dreamed again. She stood in the flooded city. Marchers surrounded her. The boy walked beside her now. Whispered, "It's not that you forgot. It's that they made you forget." He handed her a velvet shoe. Inside it was a folded paper. It read, "Don't let them extract you before you extract her." She turned and Velvet Janey stood there, not behind the mirror, not in the shadows. Just there, smiling. "You've remembered enough," she said. "It's time to finish the loop." Janey opened her mouth to scream, but the dream folded in on itself like paper soaked in ink. She woke up in her bathtub, water still running, a red whistle on the edge of the sink, and the mirror cracked. Janey Whitmore knew the dream was fake before it even started. That's how good they'd gotten whoever they were. The moment it opened with a sunny field, a picnic blanket, and Tallulah wearing a tiny sun hat and politely serving deviled eggs. Janey called it, "This is a trap." Velvet Janey appeared shortly after, lounging under a cherry tree, reading a book titled How to Replace a Spine, a Memoir. "Really subtle," Janey muttered. "You made it this far." Velvet Janey purred, licking her finger to turn a page. Might as well make it comfortable. Janey stepped forward. The grass didn't move under her feet. No smell. No warmth. Just the illusion of sensation. "This isn't a dream," she said. "It's a memory sandbox. A containment zone." "Correct." Velvet Janey smiled, closing the book. "And guess what? You're the last one in." The sky darkened like someone had yanked the dimmer on reality. "You're not a person," Janey said. "You're an accumulation." Velvet Janey stood, smoothing her dress black. No longer velvet, just flat, threadbare. "I'm the part they couldn't control. The part that adapted. The part that remembers." Janey shook her head. "You're a parasite in my head." "No," she whispered, stepping closer. "I'm your reflection. The part that looked too long, listened too hard. The part that said yes to room 206B. Janey took a step back. "I never said yes." Velvet Janey's smile widened. "Not this version." Cue the collapsing picnic. Trees vanished. The ground shifted. Janey stood in a hospital hallway now. Walls gray, lights flickering. Door labeled room 206B. This was it. This was the loop's endpoint. The final chamber. A voice whispered from behind the door. "Janey, do you remember who you were?" She touched the knob. Her hand passed through it. No resistance, no door. Just the illusion of one. She stepped through. The room was empty. Just a chair, a mirror, and a girl. 7 years old. Curly hair. Sitting cross-legged on the floor. Playing with alphabet blocks. She looked up. "Hi," she said. "I used to be you." Janey knelt. "Is this where it started?" The girl nodded. "They said if I helped them, the dreams would stop. But they didn't. They just got smarter." Janey reached for her. Her hand didn't pass through. It touched flesh. Real, warm. "I want to stop it," Janey said. "End the loop." "You can't," the girl said. "But you can unplug it." She pointed to the mirror. Behind the glass, Velvet Janey. Still smiling. "Break the mirror," the girl said, "or she finishes the upload." "Upload. She's moving out of your head," the girl whispered. "She's trying to cross. Permanently." Janey stood, took the chair, and threw it. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. Each shard reflected someone different. Faces. Lives. Versions of Janey she'd never lived but somehow remembered. The flood began. Memories surged through her. The night in Mercy Pines when she first said yes. The sedation. The dreams. The others. All the loops. And the velvet self that followed each one. She fell to her knees. Breathing hard, a voice echoed through the void. Loop 43B, terminated. She woke up screaming, back in her apartment. Alarms blaring, laptop fried, cat hissing. On her desk, her guilt notebook, open to a page that hadn't been there before. In her handwriting, "It's done. I ended it. If I forget again, remind me the whistle isn't for calling help. It's for stopping time." And taped to the page, a broken red whistle. A few hours later, Agent Reeves arrived. Janey handed her the page. The whistle. The tape. "I think the loop's over." Reeves nodded. "We think so, too." "What now?" Janey asked. Reeves hesitated. "Now, we monitor. And we wait. And we never dream again." Which, honestly, was fine by Janey. She unplugged the EEG monitors, shut down the dream logs, moved her mattress into the hallway and surrounded it with motion sensors, salt, a small cactus named Gerald, and exactly 6 battery-powered lanterns. She left one note taped to her fridge: "If I start dreaming again, unplug me." But the dreams did stop, for a while, until the boy in the yellow raincoat showed up in her fridge, holding a tiny velvet shoe and a note. One more loop, one more door. Janey stared at him, sighed, and said, "Fine. But I'm bringing snacks this time." The last time Janey Whitmore dreamed, it didn't start with a murder. There was no cryptic whisper, no strange symbols, no wet footprints across the ceiling, or surprise Latin mutterings. It began with quiet, a still forest, pine trees rising into fog, a narrow path underfoot, soft wind brushing past her ears like an old friend saying goodbye. She was barefoot, but the ground didn't hurt. For the first time in months, maybe years, the dream felt like hers. No red whistle, no boy in a raincoat, no velvet shoes, just the forest, and a figure up ahead seated on a log, poking a small fire. As she approached, she saw it was the girl, the one from room 206B, but older now, Janey's age, wearing the same hoodie Janey had lost in high school. She smiled. "Hey, you found it." "Found what?" "The end," she said, gesturing to the fire. "It doesn't burn anything. It just glows. You did it." "I don't know if I stopped her," Janey said, sitting down beside her. "I think maybe she's just waiting." "Could be." The girl shrugged. "But the loop's closed now, and for once, you're the one who gets to dream." Janey breathed in. The air smelled like pine and cinnamon. "Will I remember any of this?" "Maybe not the words," the girl said. "But you'll remember the weight of it, and the shape it left behind." They sat for a long time, watching the fire that didn't burn. Eventually, Janey stood. "Is this goodbye?" "Sort of," the girl said. "Unless you decide to loop again." Janey laughed softly. "Hard pass." And she walked down the path, her feet brushing over moss and memory. In the real world, Janey opened her eyes. Morning sun filtered through the blinds. The air was warm. Her laptop was off. Her fridge didn't whisper. And for once, her apartment smelled like toast and not interdimensional dread. Tallulah slept curled at her feet, gently twitching in her own quiet dream. Janey reached for her journal, not the guilt notebook, but a new one. The clean one. She wrote, "I had a dream last night. It wasn't a crime. No shadows, no symbols, just trees and silence. It was nothing. And it was everything." Then she got up, made coffee, and watched the sun climb the window pane like it had nowhere else to be. She still had questions. Of course. Who made Project Carousel? What was room 206B really built for? Where did the Velvet Lady go when she wasn't wearing someone's face? But those were questions for another loop. Not this one. This one was finished. And somewhere, deep in the Bureau's archived basement, under outdated faxes and unopened packets of powdered coffee, a file was quietly updated. Loop 43B, status closed, subject retired. Dream access inactive.